Good evening. It's been described as a shambles and a fiasco. The government is scrapping its decision to take the West Coast Main Line rail franchise off Richard Branson's Virgin trains. A number of civil servants have been suspended over what the new Transport Secretary is calling significant technical flaws in the franchise bidding process.
It means the franchise is no longer being handed over to the rival bidder, First Group. Scrapping the process will cost taxpayers at least £40 million. Keith Wilkinson reports.
So, for now, it's business as usual for Virgin Trains and their West Coast Main Line services. The government is backtracking on its plans to withdraw their franchise and hand it to First Group. It says civil servants got their sums wrong during the bidding process, failing to take into account things like inflation and passenger increases. It's not often that you get the likes of Birmingham Chamber of Commerce and the union leader Bob Crow in complete agreement, but both are describing this as a shambles. And even the Transport Secretary, the Derbyshire Dales MP Patrick McLaughlin, is admitting a big mistake has been made. Richard Branson had described the loss of his franchise as insane and threatened court action.
The franchise process was completely flawed, and I think that, this was one of the most blatant cases. But we have actually made some suggestions over the last 5 years to government about how it can be improved, and I suspect those suggestions will be perhaps listened to a little bit more carefully now.
It was only when we were collecting the evidence for this court case that these errors and flaws became apparent.
So in other words, it would never have come to light if Richard Branson hadn't mounted that legal challenge?
If the legal challenge hadn't been mounted, we may not have found these out.
And today, as it was revealed, taxpayers will have to fork out at least £40 million over the affair. Some gave their reaction on trains between Birmingham and Coventry.
Bit of a fiasco, really, isn't it?
I think it's been handled very badly, and the cost must be huge.
It's very serious, and it's costing a lot of money for people like me who travel on the trains every day, because I understand they're also going to refund all the bidding costs that the companies have spent. So I'm not very pleased about it, really.
For people like us on this train, it's a disaster because it means no more investment while things are on hold, and goodness knows how long that'll be.
Virgin are hopeful that ministers will now accept they should carry on running the West Coast line. Business leaders say they hope it will not affect services to the Midlands.
It's all a bit of a shambles, isn't it? I think obviously this is clearly embarrassing for the government, and now they need to try and put it right very quickly, because what we don't want is for this to cause lots of problems on the West Coast Main Line.
But just what went wrong in the first place? 2 urgent government investigations are now underway to find out. Keith Wilkinson, Central Tonight.
Well, what is now being seen as a shambles was, until today, being described by the government as a fair and robust franchising system. How things change.
Yes, Labour's leapt on it as an example of what they say is coalition incompetence. Our political correspondent, Alison Mackenzie, reports from the annual conference in Manchester.
Labour Party members were among those calling foul when the West Coast Main Line contract was awarded in August. Astonishment the reaction today to the turnaround in events. Another example, they say, of a coalition calamity.
At a time when we should be looking at how every penny is spent, we've just heard that the government are having to pay out £40 million, and it could be even more if First challenged this. £40 million of taxpayers' money down the drain that could have been used to keep fares down. Of course it calls into question the wider issues. The government are now saying they're going to do an independent review of what went wrong in this case, and we want them to look at the broader issue of, is franchising the best way to get value for money for taxpayers?
Rail unions are hoping that this signals the end for the privatisation programme for railways, insisting it leads to a poorer service for the customer.
Its primary motivator is profit, and when people are looking for profit, they'll cut corners, they'll underinvest, and we want a proper, decent public service. We want something that is part of our national infrastructure.
Among those taking heart at the decision today, anti-high-speed rail campaigners, believing it strengthens their case.
What this shows is what we've known all along, that the DFT forecast cannot be trusted. Now, what this announcement today has meant is that this will cost the country £40 million. HS2 will cost the country £33 billion and is based on exactly the same flawed methodology that has been proved to be wrong today. HS2 has to be stopped.
The Transport Secretary says the fault for what happened lies squarely with officials. 3 have been suspended pending an inquiry. Labour, though, is having none of it, and they'll be pursuing this matter far beyond the conference here in Manchester. Alison Mackenzie, Central Tonight.